Girls of Reddit, what is the most obvious sign you gave to a guy and he didn't get it? My now fiancé told me he liked me, and I told him I wanted to get to know him. We went on a date, and at the end of the night we kissed and arranged a second date. I told him later that night that I liked him back. After a few days he messaged me, but do you mean like as a friend, or do we like each other the same way? I'm sorry but you have to spell it out for me. I don't want to get the wrong impression. With my boyfriend, on our first date he didn't give me a kiss, and left and I just said, "What, no kiss?" And he just awkwardly laughed and walked away. I thought I blew it or something. Second date he asked me to his apartment. I asked if I could take my pants off, since they were uncomfortable, and we laid on the bed watching a movie. I had my leg over his body, and left leaning in close for a kiss, and he didn't kiss me. He finally kissed me when I was about to leave, and was in the middle of talking when he did it. LMAO. There were rumors in my store that I liked one guy, and that he liked me back, but we were too stupid to admit it to each other. One day I was fed up with all of this, and decided to take action. So in front of everyone I shouted at him from the opposite side of the department, name I like you, okay? He turned and shouted back, thank you. We dated for 3 months, then we broke up. Girl I worked with, when I was 18 or 19, ran her finger up and down the button-up shirt seam, where the buttons are, said, I always wanted to ride in a Mustang. I owned a classic one, 1965, and I was like, oh cool. Yeah, that'd be fun. I can give you a lift home after work if you want. And then I did, and she was all, you want to come up and watch a movie? And that's when I hit deep clueless nerd and said I would, but I'm meeting some friends to play D&D. Yeah, peak nerd. I met a cute guy in college and we started texting a lot. Our school used to host 19+ themed club nights on campus every Thursday night, and one of those nights, the guy texted me and asked if I was planning on going. I hadn't planned on it, but was hoping the guy would invite me to go with him. So I said something like, no, I always want to go, but none of my friends are 19 yet, so I have no one to go with. He said, oh, that's too bad. Have a good night. Eventually, he caught on to my flirting, and we've been dating for 3.5 years now. He still insists that there was nothing wrong with his response. I'm not a girl, but the idiot guy. I had just met the best friend of my best mate's girlfriend. She got more physical throughout the night to a point where she was constantly touching me, and while we were at a strip club, her idea, she suggested we leave as my best mate and his girlfriend had disappeared. We were both a bit drunk at this point and decided to get a cab home. When the cab pulled up at her place she asked if I wanted to stay the night and she would drive me home in the morning. Me, being the polar opposite of Stephen Hawking, said nah, it's fine, my place is only a few minutes away. Once I got back to my place the driver asked if I was gay and everything hit me at once. Ended up back at her place a few weeks later after my mate explained just how dumb I am. Reminds me of my old colleague, F, at school, which I met again 12 years later. We hung out a lot, had fun, and I always walked home with her. Then she asked if I want to stay with her because my way home was so far, 25 minutes by foot, and it was so cold, winter. Quite okay, but I declined every time because it isn't that far and I'm not freezing. Then we made an appointment to go to a ski jumping event. The night before we left with her car, she asked me to meet at her brother's favorite bar because she needed something from him. We met there. After a few drinks we walked to her place. She asked again. This time she said that it would be much easier the next day to drive together from her place. Sounds logical, doesn't it? Much better than before. Up in her apartment, she started to prepare the couch and turned to me to get up in time tomorrow. Wouldn't it be better if you join me in my bed? And suddenly I got it. I got all of it and felt so dumb about the many times, and even this time, before. We sometimes need definitely much clearer signs. Guy here. She slept in my twin bed with me. Twice. The second night, she spent an hour leading up to bed talking about sex. I slept fully clothed right next to her. Both times. Edit. And the best part. She talked about overhearing a couple having sex in the freshman dorms a year earlier. It was too dark to see in, so she and her friends crept up to the open window to listen. Curious, I coaxed her down the stairs and into my car and drove us over to the dorms. I parked and pointed at a first floor window. She laughed and asked if I'd heard them too. I told her that it was my room last year. I drove us back, tucked her in, and played Street Fighter Third strike for an hour before falling asleep next to her. Early on with my husband, at the time just random internet person I had become friends with, he was taking about his motorcycle. Very obviously coming on to him, I go, yeah. So when are you going to take me for a ride on that thing? I was being like over the top lascivious about it too. And in complete seriousness he replied that he doesn't take on passengers because he can't handle the added responsibility, and he actually removed his passenger pegs. I like to tease him about it to this day, though I've added in an emo hair flip to go with the line about the passenger pegs. I love him, but man, he can be dense. The first time we hooked up we were making out on his couch. A bit later, he gets up to go to bed and sets me up to sleep on the couch, which is fine. He wasn't being pushy or presumptuous. I admired that. Not I also wanted to get laid, so I go, or maybe I could sleep with you. I swear I smelled the gears in his head burning as they ground to a halt and changed direction. I was stranded in a hotel because my flight was cancelled for weather. I booty called the guy I figured was most likely to show up and conveniently lived nearby. First and only booty call of my life, so maybe I did it wrong, but he was not catching on. He showed up, I had a bucket of beers waiting, and we laughed and talked on the balcony for a while. I finally got my courage up and went inside, pushed the desk chair aside, and sat on the desk. He followed and sat in a chair across the room. I asked him to close the drapes. He walked past me and closed the drapes and went back to the chair. I suggested he take his shoes off. He did, in the chair. I suggested he move closer. He brought the chair. Maybe a bit closer than that. OMG, will you please come here? He finally got it, but damn, it seemed like a lot of work for a guy with a reputation for being a ladies' man. I kind of figured back quote come to my hotel room would have been sufficient. Married to him for 12 years now. Guy here. After a breakup one time my female friend invited me over to stay the night with her. I got all excited and was like hell yeah. Got over there and shared the same bed after she snuck me through the house and into her room. She leaned over and said, I hope this isn't confusing. I don't sleep with my friends. So like my mother taught me, I minded my own. She got really close and brushed up against me multiple times. My wife, different lady, best woman ever BTW, told me years later that she was coming into me and wanted to see if I wanted to take a risk and go after her. Essentially forcing the first move, which to a guy is confusing as fuck. I don't sleep with friends, but then rubs up against me and has me sleep in a single bed right up against her. To this day I find it confusing as all hell. I'm the guy in the situation, but this happened to me back in high school. I was talking with her on AIM and telling her about the movie Saved, which I had just seen and thought it was really hilarious. She said she'd love to see it, and I told her could lend her the DVD, and she said, how about you just come over and we watch it together? I went to her house the next day and we watched it together in her basement, and after we finished she told me I should probably go since she had homework to do. I was so excited to show someone else that movie that it didn't even occur to me that it meant something different until her friend messaged me asking why I led her on. Honestly, had I not been completely oblivious I would have loved to have made some sort of move because I thought she was really cute. A girl once changed next to me on the bus before a band event. I averted my eyes like a gentleman and figured lots of people were changing, so it wasn't a big deal. A year later the same girl offered to take me to a secluded part of our high school after hours and blow me. I thought she was joking and laughed it off. Another time I got to school early and she asked me to drive her to McDonald's for an Egg McMuffin. While we were driving she said we could just skip school, go back to my place, no parents home, and fuck. I thought she was joking and laughed it off. Senior year after an awards banquet she told me she wanted to take me back to her place and make out and see where the night went. I think you know my reaction. It turns out there were a lot of girls interested in me and lots of situations like this where I missed obvious hints. In my defense, I was a recovering fat kid who was mercilessly teased in middle school, then got hot without realizing it, and I couldn't conceive of a world where these girls were serious and not making fun of me. Still, who boy was I dense?